We are live. JT here. Welcome to the huddle. For those listening or watching for the first time, the huddle is where I sit down with other successful people from the world of sport and coaching so we can learn more about their journey to greatness. Why? Because success always leaves clues. And folks, if you're tuning in live with us today, happy Friday. If you're checking us out, listening to the podcast, happy whatever day it is, because every day is a great day. I am really enthused for our conversation today. My special guest is someone who I've been watching, and I've been really enjoying watching her journey to greatness, watching her share her story, helping other people share their stories as a way to bring more positivity, to empower others. And I'm really excited to hear about, just have a conversation today. My guest in the huddle today is Angelica Galluzzo. How are you, Angelica?
Hi, I'm really good. Thank you. How are you?
Oh, great. Every day is, like, as we were saying before you came on, every day is a great day, right?
Yep.
So for those that maybe don't know about you, Angelica, what I would love to do is if you would share maybe something fun, maybe it's an interesting fact, maybe it's a quirk about yourself that maybe not a lot of people know, but you would feel comfortable sharing.
Hmm. Well, I'm pretty much an open book.
Okay.
My favorite thing is my puppy. Her name is Tessa. She's a pocket beagle, so she's small and very cuddly. Um, I don't know. I like to go on long walks with my sister and my dog all the time. Yeah, we'll go with that as a fun fact.
I think that speaks volumes to you and your athletic background, right? Get outside, fresh air, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I like it. So, Angelica, again, you've had a very interesting story, and I really appreciate. I guess first, what I want to say is just I really wanted to take a moment just to share some gratitude with you, and just really just send you some appreciation. I've really been inspired by watching your journey over the last few months and how you're choosing to show up in this world and really share your story, help others share theirs, and really bring more awareness to the mental wellness space. So I guess I first wanted to start off by just saying that to you. So thank you.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. And it's something I've tried to improve on within my own life because I think I have had a lot of lows that has made me see kind of the other side of it. So now sitting here today, I've really tried to be that person for other people and that person I needed back then.
Mm-hmm. And I love that, right? And that speaks volumes to you as a leader, right? Like you are essentially supporting and serving the people that where you were before, right? Just trying to be that shining light.
Yeah, that's all I want to do.
Okay. So you've had a very successful career as an athlete, right? You were a high level. I was looking at some of your stuff like a high level athlete in many sports, but you chose to specialize in soccer, and you've played at the university level and done very, very well. I'm curious, what role has sport played for you in your life? And what has been probably the biggest lesson you've taken away from it?
It's a great question. Yeah, sport has definitely been the most important thing in my life since I was 3 years old, is when I first started playing soccer. My dad played growing up, so he kind of forced it on all of us. I have three siblings as well, so we all played growing up. And it was just something that I instantly fell in love with. I was also blessed. I got the opportunity to try a bunch of sports when I was younger, and soccer was the one I loved the most. So I decided to continue on with it. And, but not just like talent and skill, it was just like who I was when I was on the field and the person it turned me into. Like, I've always just had that deep appreciation for the sport and what it's given me. Um, and along with that, I've just had a bunch of injuries. So taking time away from sport really makes you appreciate it more. Um, so the one thing I guess it's taught me the most is just that the people that you're around and the person that you become because of your sport. So it's not just the wins and losses and what you do on the field, but it's what personality traits you learn as a teammate, as a captain, as just a player. And I've taken a lot out of the game and tried to incorporate it into my life.
And what I love about what you shared was I really got a sense that, yes, as an athlete and anyone that's played at a high level knows that we strive to, win that last game of the season. But the greater lesson, like you mentioned, was who you become in the process, right? It's those lessons that you learn on, during those difficult moments of practice, or those moments where maybe the game doesn't go as you planned and you might have lost on the scoreboard, but how do you come back from that? And so I really love, and it speaks volumes, because you're really, what I got a sense from you is this idea of focusing on process, not product.
Yeah, and don't get me wrong, I'm an extremely competitive person. I want to win all the time. Any of my teammates will tell you that.
Yeah.
But I honestly think it's because of the lows that I did experience, both mentally and because of my injuries, that taking so much time away from your sport and wanting it so like that much more really did teach me a lot. And I think, although it was unfortunate during the time, I'm so grateful that I did experience those lows, because it allowed me to really appreciate the highs, as cheesy as that sounds, but it's true.
And I love how you sharing that, right? That figuring out, sort of like developing that sense of appreciation when things were taken away. And because that was how I first came across you and what you're growing with the Revolutionized Mind community, was because when you were chatting with Emily Sleuth in there. And I think back to some of the conversations Emily and I've had, and some of her story that she shared there. I'm curious, when you were going through that challenging time, that adversity, when the sport was taken away from you, what was it that really stuck with you that made you realize that there are lessons to be learned when you experience struggle, adversity, resistance?
Yeah, well, the one thing that kept me going through recovery and rehab was just that I wanted it so bad. I wanted to get back on the field because I knew in my heart I wasn't done playing yet. I never wanted to give it up. And I mean, my mom wasn't too happy that I kept going back because I kept getting hurt. But I think like putting in all that hard work, and it's not something that a lot of people see because you're doing the rehab at home. You're going to physio almost every day, especially with knee surgeries, which is what I've had, 5 of them. You need to do those little things like just in the morning when you wake up. So it's things that people don't see. And it was through that adversity and pushing myself that I really learned more about myself and what the sport meant to me. So yeah, it was just like a huge learning process. And there were obviously some days where I did not want to do it because it's tough to put yourself through that every day. But at the end of the day, I always came back to me knowing that I did want to get back to playing, and I knew I had to do that stuff to get there.
And I love what you share there. It's just like a simple reminder that it's really easy to get mesmerized by seeing the product that's on the field, right? And I think we do live in a culture where, with social media, again, social media can be great, but it's also remembering that we are seeing the highlight reel of people, right? We're not seeing those moments sometimes where it's like you're seeing this person where, yeah, they are struggling, they don't want to do the work, but so it's really interesting that you share that. But I love how you talked about that your desire to get back on the field was so strong that it pushed you to do the work.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm curious. So your background is in psychology, and again, being a varsity athlete. One of the interesting experiences and opportunities I've had recently was to talk during a clinic with Football Ontario. And I started talking about this idea of really around self-image, right? Identity, and really sharing these concepts about the 21st century athlete. Like, how do we really help them maximize their gifts, their talents, and their abilities? How do we actually help them perform at their highest ability? So I'm curious, with your passion for mental health, with your passion for athletics, how closely tied are those two things now, mental health and optimizing performance?
Yeah, so that's a very complex topic because there are so many individual differences in athletes and in coaches. And it's something that we had discussed at one of my groups, the Student Athlete Mental Health Initiative, was just that a lot of our coaches are from that older generation, especially now, where, like we were talking about before, they have this hard mentality of pushing you and yelling at you to push you. But it's all a good intention, but it's not always received well from the other end. And I think that's just because our generation, I think, does prioritize more of the mental health and positivity. And me, myself, as an athlete, I think I like balance that a little bit because I do need to be pushed. Like, I love the hardness from my coach and pushing me to do another set, to do another run, whatever. But I think it's also important that coaches understand what mental health is and how it can affect performance, especially as a student athlete when you have so many commitments academically, athletically, socially, that we won't always be at our best. And we're dealing with so many things. And I think there just needs to be that like sense of compassion towards maybe if you're having an off day or you can't come to practice one day because you're making up an assignment that you missed. So just opening that line of communication and creating an open space to discuss those things.
Mm. And you bring up so many great points, right? You talked about, compassion, right? And I look at it as being able to step inside someone else's shoes or look at it through the world through their lens, right? Or, open communication. So I'm curious for you as an athlete and just, again, being around other high level athletes, would you say is the most important thing that coaches now, right, working with the 21st century athlete, what is it that they really need to emphasize today? Like, is there one skill where it's like, you need this to really relate to athletes now?
For the coaches?
Yeah, for coaches, sorry.
It's okay. It's tough and that's where it gets tricky because time management is super important, especially like you are yourself committing to these things. So you have to be sure that you are on top of all of your commitments. But then taking the mental side, I think, say compassion. Like that would be the biggest skill that the coaches should take on, because I don't think it should take away from their role as a coach. And if their style is more of like the pushing, hard hitting stuff, then I don't think that necessarily needs to be changed. But just having that side of compassion and understanding when a player might, again, need an off day or they're not doing their best, to not push them on those days or to give them the break that they need.
And I love that it comes back to that, right? Like compassion. And when I think about myself and the times, right? And hey, I'm a human like anyone else. But when I really think back to when I was the most effective as a coach, it was this delicate balance between where that compassion was there. And I say it's that love, that really falling in love with the idea of helping someone, like really like being really driven by people or athlete first, right? But then also having those high expectations, right? Where it's like, okay, you say you want to be, and we'll say from a university, you want to be an all Canadian. Here's the expectation. Here's the actions you need to take to get there. So I find it's always, if an athlete, or I guess in any area of life, if someone genuinely feels like you care, that you have their best interests at heart, and that trust is there, then you can have high expectations because that connection, that bond, that trust is there.
And it just allows the player, like, say they're doing all that they can to meet these expectations, but then on that one day that they can't do it, they feel comfortable approaching their coach saying XYZ, and this is why I feel this way. And for the coach to actually receive that well and act on it in an appropriate manner, I think is huge.
No, again, I think it's a great point. I think it's a great conversation to have. So I'm curious, your journey, as we were talking about, was really unique, right? And part of it was sharing some of your experiences, and as a way to really help and be of service to other people that are maybe going through similar challenges. Was there a moment where you said, okay, I need to become a leader in the mental wellness space? I need to, have the podcast as a way to have these conversations of things that, I think back to when I was an athlete in university. I don't remember having those conversations, or maybe I was very naive or ignorant about them, or we just didn't talk about those things. But I'm curious for you, when was that moment, or was there a moment where you kind of just said, okay, I need to step out and be a leader in this space?
Yeah, so I would say I've been like a mental health advocate since high school. Like since my struggles started, that's kind of when I gained a greater appreciation for it and started doing my own research, and which is why I wanted to get into psychology in the first place. Um, and at my old school, because I transferred in university, I started getting into groups that were involved in mental health awareness and education. So I was selected as a peer leader for a support group. And then when I transferred to Western, I had the opportunity of interviewing for the co-lead position of the Student Athlete Mental Health Initiative. So I was in that role for about 3 years, and that was amazing because it gave me the opportunity to lead this group in a way that meant something to me. And we had built such a great group of people who were all passionate about the same thing. And I think we did really make a big impact on the Western community, just how we viewed mental health and athletics and what we could change within our teams and our coaches and just the department in general. But then the podcast started earlier this year in January. And it was actually something that Emily had said to me on one of our calls. She had just said something like, like when you're ready to do something and you're inspired, and you'll know like when you're ready to start something. And I think in my head, I had already had this idea that I wanted to do a podcast. So hearing her say those words, it just kind of hit me. And I was like, okay, it's time to start.
So it sounds like leadership's always been a big part, right? It has always been something that, that's why I really, that athlete mindset. I'm a firm believer that athletes make great leaders because there's something about that ambition and drive and that we develop just being able to compete at a high level in sport. But then also we're so used to being coached and mentored that it's those characteristics that allow us to step to the front of the line.
Yeah, you learn so much being an athlete, like just the amount of skills, personality traits, even just like communicating with others. And that's why I say, like you said, I think athletes make great prospective employees because we have all these skills. We have experience with high expectations, meeting deadlines, and everything. So athletes are definitely superior in my mind.
So you were mentioning, and something that caught my ear was you were talking about when you started to do this work at Western with Sammy, you really started to notice some changes happening, right? Not only with the student athletes, but coaches and just awareness, right? And just this education piece. What was probably the one thing that you noticed was the biggest change that really happened through your time in that role?
I would say just overall conversations within the department because, well, I mean, I transferred to Western in my third year, so I'm not sure how it was before I got there, but I know a lot of the athletes that we had got on our team had said that they felt more comfortable speaking up, whether it was to us or their teammates or their coaches, because we made these conversations normalized within the department. And we kind of demanded that the leads, everyone high up in the department would allow us to create this space and promote well-being and these conversations within their own teams. And one thing we tried to push was that everybody who was in our group at SAMI identified themselves as an ally within their own teams. So just sending that message, at the beginning of season saying, I'm a part of this group, I'm passionate about mental health, and if anybody needs anything, I'm here to talk. And I know a lot of people did do that at the beginning of each year that I was there, and it went really well. And they did have a lot of people reach out to them and even bring more people into the group.
And what I heard from you there was, and I love how you talked about, it was just normalizing the conversation. Mm-hmm. And why that stuck out to me is I just thought about, the world we live in, right? And every generation has its own, unique challenges and issues. And I think back to social media, right? Social media is a wonderful tool. But again, the challenge is it's like this image of perfection, right? The highlight reel of other people. So to me, when you talk about normalizing, it's just understanding and telling people it's okay. Like, yeah, you know what? You're going to have some days where you feel great. You're going to have some days probably where you don't feel so great. Now, obviously, it's part of life. It's part of the game of life. And it really is sort of that law of rhythm, right? That again, up, down, but it's normal, right? It's part of the human experience. Mm-hmm. So as you begin to have these and create these allies within teams, right? And bring more people into the vision, did you find that the conversations the language was changing? Like were people becoming more open, and was it becoming more normalized?
Yeah, absolutely. I would say so. We had a group of about 80 athletes. It did spike up really fast. And it was the first year SAMI was brought to Western in general. So to see that much interest right away was amazing. And we would always just have these group discussions and talk about any pressures or stressors that we were facing during that year. And it was awesome to hear everybody open up about, meeting deadlines or being stressed that their coach wasn't playing them or injuries. And there were so many different aspects that different athletes with different teams were explaining to us. And we didn't have all the answers. Like, we weren't professionals, and we were just given resources from SAMI Canada, and we would relay that information to our group. But it just would create a discussion, and anybody else, say somebody else wasn't getting playing time, they would speak up and they would relate back, and they would maybe form a friendship and start talking about ways that they were coping with it. So just having that open dialogue. And one thing we would always say is just like fostering a safe environment, to just come into the room and talk about whatever you were feeling and try to come up with coping strategies. And I think just like a giant therapy session, just letting out your emotions.
I love hearing that it was really this sense of, it really sounds like you were building a greater sense of community, right? And I think just from my own experiences, those moments where I feel like in the past where I've really struggled or felt challenged, it's when you sort of quote unquote get in your own head and you think that you're the only person experiencing that. But I love the sense of you just building a sense of community, creating that safe environment. Like you talked about, it really gives people an opportunity to feel seen and heard. And I think that as humans, like we all have that desire to really feel seen and heard and connected to other humans, and just realize that, what we're going through is, someone else has gone through that. Right. So I think it's amazing.
Yeah. And that's like a main psychology fact. We are wired that way. We do need connection. We do need to feel belonging from other people. So that's definitely something that we pride ourselves on, is that we created that community, that people were safe and free to share what they wanted to share.
Mm-hmm. So I'm curious, again, you sort of have a unique perspective because you're a high level athlete, but you also have this background in psychology. So you have this beautiful mix, and you have this passion for mental health. So I'm curious, like I've always felt that the education is getting better, right? Like people understand that, mental health, mental wellness is important, right? We see that. we see that there's more awareness out there, right? Bell Let's Talk Days and groups like Sammy that are having these conversations. So I'm curious, from your experience, again, being a leader, what is the next evolution of really empowering people to better understand mental health, to really empower more people to, I guess, take control, maybe empower themselves to be able to, like, what's the next evolution of this mental health journey?
I love that question. I think it can go a few different ways, but something you said a couple minutes ago, just saying that like there were some highs and there were some lows. Something I preach a lot is just that I think we grew up being told that we should ignore the lows or try to forget about them, stuff them deep down. But something that I've learned through my own journey and in school is just that accepting the negatives, just as you accept the positives, is super important because it allows you to feel both ends of the spectrum. And especially when it comes to mental illness, the more you try to fight it and run away from it, the more it's going to try to present itself. So actually taking time to understand what's going on with your inner thoughts and emotions. And I think that's where like the wellness and the spiritual journeys come in with the meditation and reflection. And I'm not a big meditator personally because I have a hard time slowing down, but I do a lot of self-reflection and just take a minute in the morning to really check in with myself and see where I'm at, because acknowledging where you are at today is going to be different than where you were at yesterday. And I think just taking that second or that minute to really check in with yourself and reflect is huge and really sets you up for your day, because if you need a rest day, you can acknowledge that and accept it. If your body wants movement today, you can acknowledge it and go for a run or work out. So I think just taking that full approach and not trying to minimize the lows is super important.
I love that for two reasons. And again, it's great having these conversations. There has been, in my opinion, this over glorification of positive thinking, right? Where it's like, it's only positive thinking. But again, with everything has a positive, everything has a negative, right? It's the law of polarity. So I love that you mentioned that, right? You have to understand that, there'll be some highs, as you talked about, there'll be some lows. And obviously, we want more but it's understanding that. And I love how you talk about the importance of checking in. So again, this is where I want to sort of tap into you having a psychology background. From your experience, from you working with other student athletes, other people, other leaders, why do you think that check-in is so important in the 21st century?
I just think our lives are so hectic all the time. And going back to social media, I have a love-hate relationship with it. I just think we are so go, go, go all the time because of what we're told, because of what social media promotes. You see somebody accomplishing all these things and you think you have to be doing the same, but we are all at completely different paths. We're all set out for different things. And I think every day is different, because some days, like I said, rest days are not bad. I think our society has made us believe that they are. If you take a Netflix lay in bed day, you're lazy or unproductive. But taking that day to yourself and not pushing yourself is actually 10 times better for your mental wellness, because then the next day you're better rested, your mindset's better. So I just think that check-in is super important, because you can see where you're at in that moment and what will serve you in that day. I'm a big promoter of like, what is going to serve me right now? What do I need today? And that's multiple things. That's what does my mind need? What does my body need? I mean, you can go soul, like what can I do to feel connected today? Is it going for a nature walk? Is it practicing yoga? There's a lot of different aspects you can go there.
And as you were sharing, what really jumped up to the top of my mind was this idea of like learning to be objective with yourself, right? And that's what I feel that check-in does. And from my experience, again, athletes, like especially ones that played at a high level, compete at a high level, they have the ambition and drive to get up and get after it. Like that's just what we do. So I feel even more so for high performers, for people that really strive for that greatness, those check-ins are even more important because it is, like you said, it's so easy to get caught up and go, 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 go. And just that ability to just stop and be present, be still is so important. And it always reminds me of the two questions, I think back to the two questions that I only ask myself, and it takes practice. Some days I do it better than others. What am I doing well? What can I do better of? Right. And it's not coming from a place of judgment. It's just literally being objective. And just like you said, it's my version of a check-in.
Mm-hmm. And it's your life too. Like you are in full control of what you want to do with your life. And I think we're just so influenced by social media and other people. And we forget that the only person we have is ourselves. We are here with our own thoughts, our own emotions. So we have to make the best out of what we have. And another thing you said back and that other, what you just said, what were you talking? What were you just saying? I just lost my train of thought.
That's okay. I was talking about like that, the winner.
Oh, the check-ins. I remember. Yeah. Sorry. Back when like I was full in my varsity career, I don't think I ever did that in the morning, like the check-ins, because I thought I didn't have a choice, because I knew I had to get up, go to class, go to practice, go to a game, do my homework, and I would just go, go, go. But now being home, online school, online work, it's really given me that chance to slow down. So if I were to give advice to high performance athletes now, I think taking that time is so important, because you do have a choice. And if you do need some time to rest your body, your mind, then I think it's important that you acknowledge that and act on it.
Very, again, great reminders. And I just love, like, you can really sense how much you value that just in your ability to be calm and present, right? Every time we've chatted, it's just there's this calmness about you that it's great. So one thing that popped up, and this is one thing I always like to push back with people a little bit and challenge in a loving way, is, I think back to the time where for most of my life, it was sort of, when people talk about greatness, success, winning, they talk that it has to be a hustle and grind. So I'm really curious, from your experience, does the 21st century athlete still think that achieving great things has to be a hustle and grind? Like, you constantly 24/7 gotta be do.
I feel like this year kind of shifted that a little bit, because everybody had time off of sport. Yeah. And I know athletic identity is a big thing where you only identify with your sport. That's something that I struggled with a lot. If you were to ask me anything, I'd just be like, I'm a soccer player and that's it. But not being allowed or able to play your sport because of the pandemic, I think more people had time to really learn who they were outside of their sport. And I know a lot of people kind of lost some motivation to even work out or do things, and rightfully so. I did as well. So just, I think, learning more about who you are, what you value in life, what you think the world needs, what you can offer, was really eye-opening for a lot of people. And I think it kind of promoted some of that slowing down, and the hustle and the grind isn't the be all end all.
And I love that idea. And the reason I asked was, I always like just asking questions and just checking in, because I know it's been a few years since I was actually a competitive athlete, we'll say. Yeah. But it's funny, because I was chatting with an old friend, and, we were talking recently about, hustle and grind. I said, well, where did that idea come from? Like, what if it was fun? What if it was easy? What if it was effortless? And you could kind of see, and he's another former high level athlete, and you could kind of just see him kind of go, huh. and when I guess why I share that is, it's interesting when we sort of challenge old ways of thinking, some of the new solutions we can create.
Yeah. And growing up, I was definitely that hustler. I just put everything I had into my sport. It was what I wanted. I wanted to achieve high things. I wanted to play at high levels. So I gave it everything. But yeah, I think like with experience and growth, I've learned to incorporate other things into my life as well.
And I love how you talk about experience. Anyone that's played, anything, whether it's sport, whether it's music, whether it's you're a writer, I think we've all had those moments where you're like in the zone or you're like in flow, whatever you want to call it, where I would say that's not a hustle and grind. That's where just things are, you lose sense of time, it's effortless, and you're just totally present. And that's the joy of life to me. Those are those special moments where that is the most beautiful moments of life, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm. And just being aware of when that burnout might happen, because that's when you push yourself too hard and you lose sense of self, you lose connections with others because you're just so into whatever you're doing in that moment. So just, again, I think checking in with yourself, seeing where you're at. If you notice yourself getting to that point, then knowing when to take a step back and incorporate some breaks and time off.
Yeah. One thing that you mentioned, Angelica, was you talked about this transition, right? Where you had transitioned from, and life's all about transitions. What has been the most challenging part of the transition, going from, competitive sport to where the next phase of life?
I feel like I definitely lost like my biggest outlet, because soccer has been my coping mechanism forever. So not having that space, and not even just the coping part of it, but the passion that came with it. I feel like I lost like a huge part of me. And I think a lot of seniors this year too, we didn't really get a chance to say goodbye to it or play our last game knowing it was the last. But I also think I'm a bit ahead because of all my injuries. I've had time off and I was kind of always prepared for it to be my last, if that makes sense, because of how intense all my recoveries were. But yeah, I think just it's like out of sport, once you're done, I think it's something everybody feels, because especially being a high performer, it's something you've done your entire life. It's a part of you, literally. So losing that is a huge transition. And I think just, again, I think understanding who you are outside of the sport and not putting all of you into your athletic identity, finding other outlets, finding other passions is super important in order to not lose yourself. And that's why I think like doing this podcast and other leadership things has really allowed me to keep those skills that I built and learned in sport and like use them in my everyday life.
That sort of is a great segue is what you talk about. I love how you were just talked about that the injuries were a blessing to a degree because it allowed you to kind of experience what life was like when you weren't right on the soccer field. I'm curious, I asked you what the biggest challenge is. What has been the biggest blessing in this whole transition away? Like, what is the thing that you've really learned about yourself, that you've gotten to know yourself better in the process?
I would say the downtime has allowed me to understand like my mind and my body more and what it needs. So instead of knowing I have to go to practice in a game, I know if I want to do a strength workout, I know if I want to do a HIIT workout. And that goes into the check-ins too. I'll just understand where I'm at today and what type of movement my body needs, because I'm still someone who's very active. And I think with knowing when I had practice and games, I couldn't do anything else because I didn't want to tire myself out, or I didn't really have the chance to explore anything else. So just trying new workouts, doing new movements. I do a lot more yoga now than I did ever before. And then same with my mind, just I found my passion for reading again. I have more time to read books, do the podcast, spend time with family and friends. So just making that transition away and spending more time with myself and living life without sport.
And I really love what you shared there. And what I want people, again, whether you're watching, whether you're listening, is listen to what Angelica's talking about, right? In every situation of life, there is, and the Chinese have that word for crises, right? You can choose to focus on the danger, what's not working, or you can choose to focus on the opportunity, what is working. And when you choose and when you sort of train and condition and discipline your mind to find what's going well, and folks, you won't get it 100% of the time, right? Like that image of like you won't. But when you do focus on opportunity, on what is working well, it just life is just, it feels different. I think is probably the easiest way to, right?
Yeah. And I say too, like, because of my history with mental illness, when I call it my dark cloud, like when that black cloud is there, these perspectives do not come easy to me. Like I am a completely different person. But when the cloud's not there and I wake up and I'm feeling good, then I really try to push myself extra to have this positive mentality, have a growth mindset. Because on those dark days, it's not accessible for me. I can't do it. And it comes with mental illness. So as positive and like inspiring as I try to be, I'm definitely not always this person, because I do have this other side of me that does often control my brain and my emotions. So that's something I've learned to deal with and accept for what it is and make the most out of it.
And you know what I love about that though, Angelica, is you're choosing to understand it, but you can really get a sense that you do your best to focus on creating solutions. Like that's what I love. That's what I really got from you on what you shared there.
Yeah. And that's something I like to promote for other people as well, because I've battled it for so many years. Like if you would have told me I'd be speaking like this, like on podcasts 6 years ago, like I would have laughed at you. So it's something that has really taken a long time to understand. But now that I know how my own illness works, I feel more confident in sharing this knowledge for other people and hopefully help them towards that journey themselves.
Oh, I love it. So I'm curious, what's next? So I'd love to hear more about your community and just, what are you growing?
So I'm loving the whole process. I love, like you, talking to awesome people and hearing their stories, and just knowing, like for myself, that I and you were putting positive things out into the world for hopefully other people to turn to as resources for hope or inspiration, whatever they're looking for. So it's something I definitely would like to continue. I have a lot of guests lined up for the next month or so I'm excited for that. And then academically, I start my master's this fall for counseling psychology. So my ultimate goal and my career path would be to become a certified counselor and either have my own private practice or work within community mental health, because that's what I'm most passionate about and where I want to make the biggest impact.
I think you sharing that is what the huddle is all about, right? It's learning about other people's journeys to greatness. And I love that, right? Like you're taking your passion to help and serve people, right? To this passion for wellness and really supporting people and having conversations, and you're doing what you love. And to me, that's success. That's greatness in my eyes, right? So I really wanted to, acknowledge you for just having that level of awareness.
Thank you. Yeah, it's awesome when you can do something that you do love, because the passion can really push you forward on days when you maybe don't want to do it. And just knowing that you are helping people is huge.
So I have one last question for you before we end for the conversation is, this last year and a half has been an interesting time, but, regardless of when you're listening to this, life at times will present us with challenges, obstacles, and adversity. Not that we expect it, but we come to understand that that's just part of the game of life, right? That's part of sport. That's just part of every area of your life. What is one piece of advice, one insight that you would give someone who's maybe struggling right now, and just really to help them get back on their feet, one action they can take to start creating some positive momentum so they can get back onto their journey of greatness?
Well, the one action I would say is make your bed every day. That's my favorite tip. Um, Especially when I was at my lowest, I would spend hours in my bed every day, or I would take super long naps. Like I would come home and just nap. But I think starting your day with an accomplishment and a task, it's been proven. There's been studies on it. Several credible people have talked about this as well. It's just like you start your day on a positive note. You've accomplished something. You feel a sense of organization and pride. And it also makes your room clean. Sleeping in a fresh made bed at night is also 10 times better than an unmade bed. But it's just something that really helps me in terms of getting out of that flow of just, having those bad days, staying in bed, going downstairs in your pajamas. So daily habits are a big thing for me. Whether it's you get up, make your bed, you get changed, like before you go downstairs and sit on the couch, put on your daytime clothes so you don't get stuck in your sweats, and whether just like do what you're doing intentionally. I like to open my blinds, let some light in. Some people like to go outside, go for a walk in the morning, have a glass of water, but just thinking about what you're doing and why you're doing it has been super helpful for me, because when you're in that like stagnant mindset and you're just going through the flow, you will start to experience some of those lows. So just that's why the check-ins are like my favorite thing. Think about what you're doing before you do it and be intentional about your actions. And starting your day early is not like early in the AM, but like as soon as you wake up, start doing things that mean something to you and will promote productivity and just positive feelings.
I love that share, Angelica. And it goes back to that idea of keep it simple, simple.
Mm-hmm.
And just that idea of, like you talked about, getting up, making your bed, putting on clothes that make you feel good, right? Opening up your blinds. And it's so funny that, just those simple actions, I think just those consistent, those inspired, those intentional, those focused actions, they build calm and confidence because they remind you that you're in control. So I just love that you just shared it. It really can be, very simple. You just gotta set the intention like you talked about.
Yeah, and it doesn't have to be like a perfect day every day. If you do want a rest day, I still encourage people to get up, make your bed, and maybe instead of watching TV in your bed, go watch it on the couch. That way you have like a change of environment. And just like a few things. And if you don't make your bed, maybe change your clothes or drink a glass of water. So it doesn't have to be everything all the time, because I definitely don't stick to that either. But just doing what your best is that day and really acknowledging where you're at and accepting your day for what it is.
Oh, that's so great. Again, that athlete mindset, right? Do your best today.
Yeah.
Always leads to great things. Okay. So how can people get connected to you, Angelica? Maybe you sparked their interest. They want to listen to the podcast. They just want to reach out and have a conversation. What's the easiest way people can connect with you?
Yeah, so my podcast is everywhere podcasts are. It's called The Revolutionized Mind. And I have an Instagram and a TikTok page for that as well, at The Revolutionized Mind. And my personal Instagram is also at Angelica Galluzzo if anybody wants to reach out. And I also have a business email if anybody wants to contact me that way. It's therevolutionizedmind@gmail.com.
Okay. Well, I will make sure to share all in the description so that people can get connected to you.
Amazing.
First and foremost, I really wanted to just take a moment to acknowledge you, Angelica. Although we've known each other for a short time, I really just wanted to acknowledge you for the woman you are, the daughter you are, the amazing athlete you are, the amazing leader, and just the inspirational human being that you are. I love what you're doing. I love how you are focused on really helping and serving others and just creating a space for people to, really thrive. So I really wanted to acknowledge you for that. So thank you for being a shining light in this world.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. And exact same to you. I love this community that you've built, and I'm so happy to be a part of it.
Mhm.
Ever since I've been at it, I love hearing from other people and seeing your interviews with other awesome people who have been
Yeah.
on their journey to greatness. So
Yeah.
thank you for including me in this, and keep doing what you're doing.
Thank you. So, folks, again, Angelica gave lots of amazing nuggets of information. And here's my challenge to you. Take one idea that Angelica shared with you today, that you heard today, and apply it to your life. And I'll leave you with this. Knowledge is potential power. It's the application of that knowledge that creates greatness. Have an amazing rest of your day, and I will see you next time in the huddle. Have a great day, everyone.
Bye.